Welcome back to the Her Resources podcast, where we have honest conversations that help women grow, lead, and thrive in work and in life. I'm your host, Linda Misegadis. If you've been listening to the show lately, you know we've been exploring much bigger conversations than HR. We've been asking, who is the future of work really being designed for? We've talked about AI, change management, communication, leadership, and the systems organizations have relied on for decades. But underneath all of those conversations is one common thread. Technology is changing, organizations are changing, jobs are changing, but people haven't changed nearly as much as we sometimes think. People want to know that their work matters, that their voice matters, and perhaps most importantly, that they matter. Yet despite decades of investment in engagement surveys, culture initiatives, leadership development, wellness programs, and employee experience, Gallup continues to report that employee engagement remains stubbornly low. Trust in leadership is fragile, and many employees report feeling disconnected from both their work and the people around them. So maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Maybe instead of asking, how do we get employees to become more engaged, we should be asking, what kind of workplace makes engagement possible? Today's guest believes the answer begins with belonging. Dr. Rosalind, Roz Cohen, is the founder of Socius Strategies, a belonging and connection strategist, executive HR leader, and the author of The Engagement Dilemma: How to Create a Culture of Belonging. With more than 25 years leading organizations through growth, transformation, talent strategy, and culture change, including serving as Chief People Officer during the integration of 3 organizations into one, Roz has spent her career studying what actually creates workplaces where people thrive. Her doctoral research explored the relationship between inclusive leadership and employee engagement, leading her to develop what she calls the engagement trifecta, a framework that's built around 3 simple but powerful questions every employee asks. What do I think? What do I feel? And do I belong? Today, we're going to unpack those 3 questions and understand maybe a little bit more than any engagement survey is ever going to tell you. Welcome to the new chapter of the Her Resources podcast. I'm your host, Linda Misegadis, and I'm so excited to be stepping into this next season with you solo. This podcast has always been about amplifying women's voices, exploring the challenges we face in HR, leadership, and life, and sharing the tools and inspiration we need to thrive. This is more than just a podcast, it's a community, a space for us to learn, lead, and lift each other up. Welcome to this new beginning. This is the Her Resources podcast. Let's get started. Roz, welcome to the Her Resources podcast.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. And gosh, I sound like I know what I'm talking about based
You
upon your
do.
You need to be introducing me anytime I speak, Linda. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, I am so excited about this. And I really kind of wanted to begin with the title of your book because I think it immediately challenges how many leaders think about workplace culture, the engagement dilemma. Why is engagement a dilemma?
So it's interesting. If you had asked me this question at the time that I finished my dissertation, I would give you one answer, but I want to give a different answer. I have been thinking about this differently lately because engagement looks different post-COVID and now with AI. I think we measure engagement by discretionary effort. How much time and energy will someone put into a particular task that goes above and beyond maybe what they could do or what their job description says or whatever? But here's what I've been thinking lately. With AI being able to take a lot of the tasks, right, that people don't want to do or that can be automated or streamlined so that they're done faster, stronger, better. The question now is, if discretionary effort is the proxy for engagement, how does that fit with the new AI world that we're moving into? And so I don't know if I have an answer. And let me say it this way. I don't have an answer, but there are things that I'm looking at that I think we need to be attuned for when we're talking about engagement going forward. Um, I think we need to shift from tasks to behaviors. We need
Mm,
to start looking at what's the initiative that someone puts in on solving a problem. How willing are they to surface disagreement and talk through it? Maybe not to try to win, but to really try to come up with an answer that makes sense and that's right for that particular problem. Um, you know, there are things and behaviors that AI and judgment calls that AI can't make, and I think we need to start thinking about that as a way of defining engagement. So I hate to come with no answer, but these are the things that are keeping me up at night and the things that I'm thinking about. I still think some of the stuff that I wrote about in my book about this trifecta and about the I think, I feel, and I belong are incredibly important. I just think the measurement is really changing.
that's a really great point that you because if I think about even when there was when we saw the big surge in diversity, inclusion, and belonging and all of these conversations, it was even though that was just, what, 5 years ago, it feels like forever ago, but it wasn't, that the environment we're in today has changed drastically in 5 years, and to your point, it's changing faster than anything I've ever seen in my career, in the movement. We thought I think back when, Y2K was coming and all of the fear around all of that, and then even when the internet came and we were that was a slow roll adoption to all of those things as well. Nothing have we ever seen has been adopted more quickly than AI and the impact it's having across everything, not just our business, but our personal lives as well. So I totally get what you're saying on how do we figure this all out? And I don't think we have the answers yet, but that's the fun of all of this.
Yeah, we don't. We definitely don't, but we have to keep having these conversations, right? Because if HR is also not in the room when these
Mhm.
conversations are happening, you have significant problems with workforce. You have significant problems with business models because if AI is transforming the way we do business and HR is not involved thinking about the types of skills that we're going to need, the way in which people are going to work, and helping to work hand in hand with the folks making those decisions, we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
We really are. And it's been interesting to watch how all of this has played itself out because just a year or so ago, the AI experts out there, these big thinkers are telling us that essentially they were going to basically all our jobs are going to be wiped out, or at least half of the workforce was going to. Now they're kind of backpedaling on that. And we're watching a lot of companies who jumped very quickly then and even made these huge investments. I think I read somewhere that less than 10% of organizations are actually getting the ROI on the investments that they made in AI. And so now it's causing everybody to rethink. But again, all of this is happening so quickly. These changes are moving along, which then also makes it very difficult to maintain a level of employee engagement, which is why I am kind of curious your thoughts around why do you think that engagement has remained so difficult despite the decades of investment? Because we are still seeing investments from companies to do this. I just wonder, are they the right investments?
I agree. I think we are still seeing low numbers because there's still the belonging and connection piece. If
Okay.
you think about how all of these things fit together, right? Let's leave engagement off to the side for a second, right? Because we talked about that being discretionary effort or whatever. But belonging and connection are critical also to engagement, and they're different. Okay, I can feel a connection with, and I'm writing about this for a post. I was standing online at TJ Maxx because I love a bargain. Don't get me
Yeah.
started. Happy to do it. I was standing online, and this woman who I don't know, and she is a very different person than I am. She asks me a question. She shows me her phone, and she's asking me a question about an iPad that she wants to buy. And I don't know why she's asking me. Maybe I look like I'm willing to talk to anybody,
Very
which is
studious. Yes, they.
even or like as my kids say, you will talk to anybody and anybody will talk to you. Like they get mortified. So I think that was part of it. And so she's asking me this question, should she buy this iPad? It looked like it was a bit of a sketchy site. And we have probably a 2 or 3 minute conversation about the
Mhm.
iPad, why I think she should wait till the holidays because the nut prices, like this whole conversation. And then I go and I get online, I go and I pay for my items and I leave. That was a real connection I had with that person. That person and I had a moment of interaction that we normally would not have had. I probably never would have had an opportunity to meet with her. So connection is different than belonging. Belonging is being able to have your individuality and who you are
Mm.
and show up in a group that also you feel a connection to. And the example that I use, um, it's it's the what connects you to a group and what makes you distinct within that group. So the example I use is I'm a divorced woman. I can hang out with a group of divorced women, and that is my connect. Like that is my belonging group. But my process of getting divorced, my experience of getting divorced is different, right? So I'm connected to these women, for example, who've all been
Yes.
divorced, but my individuality and my process is different. And belonging allows those two things to be together in the same place. So, what I think we don't talk about with engagement is how are we creating these spaces of belonging where people can let's use discretionary effort, can take their discretionary effort, right, and do the tasks that they need to get done, but also feel recognized for the group that they're a part of and their individuality in that. And that's really hard to measure. And I think that's why engagement still, the numbers are low, why people are still trying to solve that problem. I don't think we've got that piece yet because they feel like two ends of the spectrum, right? I want to belong to a group that I feel a part of, but I also want to be recognized for my individuality. And I think that's the struggle.
That's a really good point in that it's something I've been thinking about as well is we talk a lot about, especially in organizations, we talk about working together and cross collaboration and teamwork and culture, but we reward individuals. We reward the individual contributor. That's who generally when you're up on the stage, it's, talking about the individual. It's not the team behind it. It's not the management. Now they may recognize the team for sure and say, well, I couldn't do this by myself. It took all of these people, but the company itself rewards that. Do you think that some of that plays in the disconnect and even that belonging and engagement component of it?
It's a great question. I do think how we reward has a piece incorporated in it, and companies don't always get that right. I worked in financial services for many years, and the question that always sort of was out there is how do you reward business development when there are groups of people involved in bringing that person into the organization and how do you say this person had this amount and this person had, and how does that look? So I think you're right. I think there's a reward component and an appreciation or a value component that we still haven't gotten right because everybody wants to make a little bit more money. And
Yeah.
so, unfortunately, we don't always see sort of the value or take into account the value of the team in that.
That's a really great point. I'm curious when one of the concepts that did really resonate with me in your engagement trifecta was these three questions, which I know we talked about a little bit when we were starting. I think I feel I belong. I'm just curious, why did you it seems so simple. Why did you go with that? Like what was your thought process as you were coming up with this?
Um, So I like to think of myself as a little stupid, and I mean that in the best self-depreciating kind of way. What's important for me is how do I make something easy and pragmatic, right? Because HR
Okay.
people are trying to live in a world where we're trying to balance so many things, and you're coming up with these formulas for compensation and these ways in which to, and everything seems over engineered and architect and over engineered. So as I started to do the research and look at the data, it came down to what I saw as three really easy concepts. I feel, I think, I belong. So the idea is with the I feel, it's I feel a part of, or I feel like I am valued within an organization. With the with the I think, it's how is this intellectually stimulating me? My brain gets excited doing the work that I do. And the I belong goes back to what we talked about a couple minutes ago is I feel connected to this group of people, but also recognized for the individual way in which I show up. So if you look at these three components, and I talk about this a little bit in the book, when we're looking to hire individuals, when we're looking to bring them into the organization, we focus a lot on the I belong and the I feel, which we should, right? Some of that we know comes from ways in which managers create teams and the behaviors that they exhibit. It's a way in which the culture of the organization envelops and brings that person into the organization. What
Mm-hmm.
we don't always focus on is the I think component, which has to happen way before you start recruiting. It's the what exactly does this job look like? Not what does the job description say, but what actually is the work being done? Because if we know that, we can create jobs and we can create ways in which we test for those jobs so that people who want to do that particular work come into the organization. And if you can do that, you're already getting the top of the cream of the creme de la creme, whatever that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're bringing in people who wanna do the work, and then the connection, the I feel and the I belong can be a part of how the organization sees it.
Hey everyone, we're the Her Resources podcast, where women share real stories, real lessons, and the resources that help them succeed. We're always looking for inspiring women, business leaders, creatives, educators, and changemakers who want to share their journey and empower others. If that sounds like you, we'd love to hear your story. Reach out to us at contact@herresourcespodcast.com and let's start the conversation. I like that you said that because I think what's missing, especially right now, because I don't know that the executives have it figured out, because as we were talking about with everything changing so quickly, is that we are really lacking clarity and purpose in many organizations today. And so that seems to really influence how employees are thinking about their work, because I'll hear this a lot of times, even from the leadership at my own company, where there's maybe sometimes the assumption that we all have it figured out as to where the company's going, what we're doing, why we're accomplishing all of these things. And I'm sure that the leadership believes that they have communicated this to everyone, right? But I find that when I talk to the actual people, that they're really struggling. And so there's not that clear direction, which kind of links directly to that, I think, where if people don't understand where we're going, then it's difficult for them to get fully invested in getting there, right?
Absolutely. If you can't get behind what the message is and what the product is that you're delivering, whatever that looks like, you're not being intellectually stimulated. And so then there's a key component. Think of a three-legged stool. We use this analogy all the time. There's one leg that's wobbly. And so you're constantly trying to readjust so that that leg isn't wobbly. But if the organization is clear, if it gets input from its folks, if it communicates with transparency, honesty to build trust, you're in a much better place because people, they can then see themselves as part of the solution.
Yes, yes, I completely agree with that. And I do think that that is what is missing so much in the workplace today. I was kind of wondering, when I think about the framework, one, I love just the simplicity in it, because it's kind of a simple way, even from a leadership perspective, to have those conversations with your team or with your employees. But I'm kind of curious, like, what are your thoughts around, instead of maybe saying, how do I motivate employees, that you kind of start asking, have I created an environment where people can think clearly, feel valued, and genuinely belong? Because that's a different kind of leadership challenge at that point, right?
It is. And what you're talking about is inclusive leadership, right? The behaviors of inclusive leadership are ones that set up a situation or set up the culture to answer those kinds of questions.
No, I like that. Well, and throughout your book and your research, one message really comes through loud and clear is that culture isn't built through mission statements. I kind of think back to my early career, and that was a big thing like, what's our mission statement? And then maybe that was plastered all over the walls, and we thought that that was enough. But we know that it's actually built through leadership behaviors. I'm curious, what did your research reveal about inclusive leadership?
I found that there are 7 behaviors that inclusive leaders exhibit. Um, and you're not doing them all the time. It's not like you have a checklist, right? And it's
Right.
not like, okay, have I done it today? Have I done this today? It's not. But what you're doing is you're acting with these behaviors in mind in a variety of different aspects when working with your team. So these 7 behaviors create a culture and can actually change the way people think and feel about the work that they do. Um, I see a lot of this. Let me say this a little differently. These behaviors, particularly during times of change or
Mm,
mergers and acquisitions or struggle, keep things constant, right? And it's
mhm.
that consistency and stability that makes people feel grounded, which allows them to do their best work.
So I'm curious, Roz, when you were looking at this and we think about inclusive leadership, you went through a very challenging time in you were the chief people officer where you brought three different organizations together into one. What did you do to really kind of help lead through all of that?
The first thing I did was something I call my listening tour, right? So you
Okay.
walk into an organization and you've been told certain things, right? Leadership gives you some experiences to here's what's going on, but the experience for them is different than the experience for others. And particularly, we had several different offices. We had a variety of people doing a variety of jobs. So the first probably 3 to 5 months was a listening tour. Tell me what's going on for you. Tell me how things are going. What do you think are some challenges that we are facing? Where do you see there being struggle? And then taking all of that information and this is going to sound really academic, but using Jay Gilbreath's model of the STAR model, which talks about different components of an organization and how they all work together, and looking and seeing where maybe that there was some falling down or some
Mm.
things were not being nearly as transparent or weren't being as assimilated as we wanted them to be. And then continue to have those conversations and working towards that goal. It sounds simplistic, but in some ways it really is. It's about listening well. It's about inviting people into the conversation and being open to hearing what they're saying. It's about recognizing that people have different experiences that are really unique based upon what the experiences they've had and what they're bringing into the situation,
Right.
and then valuing that, right? Then working together in order to either make the changes or share the information or continuing to refine the work that was being done. So, it's never perfect. It's messy, messy work, and you can't be if you're an HR professional, you can't it's not the kind of thing you can sort of sit back and just listen to. You've gotta sort of be in the weeds on.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point, and I'm curious too, how do you deal with so I see this happens oftentimes when leaders do this, they come in new and they do those listening tours, which I absolutely love. How do you deal though with the people who feel like, well, they never asked me, they didn't come and talk to me about this? What do you do in those situations? Like, how are you choosing who you're talking to? Because you're always go if somebody's feelings are always gonna be hurt, right, in the
Oh, yeah,
process, somebody's gonna
totally.
feel like they got left out. How do
Yep,
you go about making those decisions? And then
yep.
also, how do you kinda deal with maybe the communication afterwards to say, Listen, I know we can't talk to everyone," and just kind of go through that. I'm just curious how you've approached that.
Yeah. So, in several circumstances where this has been this where we're trying to sort of understand how people are thinking,
Yeah.
it's open forum, right? I am gonna and literally went to each office in a variety of different locations and said, "I'm here. I wanna hear from you. Let's talk." So giving people that opportunity. The other is allowing people and encouraging them to put time on my calendar to do one-on-one because some folks don't like to talk in a but there's the other piece too, where someone says, "Well, you didn't ask me." I think we have to hold people accountable, right? You have agency. If you wanted to talk to me, you could talk to me, right? So there's a little bit of reciprocity or a relationship between the individual and the organization that has to allow for agency within each, right? If you want to come and talk to me, as the chief people officer, I'm going to do everything I can to get your input and to hear from you, but I need you to do the same thing. I need you to be a part of the solution and a part of the conversation. So I think sometimes we not over engineer, but we overcorrect, right? Like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, please come and
Yes.
talk to me. Please come to us. Yes. And if you don't want to, that's okay. But don't hold me accountable for you not choosing not to do that.
Well, I just did, we just had an episode on the podcast where we were talking about communication. And one of the things that we were chatting a little bit about is treating people like adults on both
Yes.
sides. So,
Yes.
exactly where the organizations, companies need to treat employees like adults and share information with them as much as you can. That
Yeah.
doesn't create, legal or compliance issues, but be as transparent as you possibly can. Assume that people are going to behave like adults. And then
Yeah.
what you just shared there is it's kind of that responding kind, and that I also have to act like an adult. So if I feel like my voice isn't being heard or I want to share, then it's incumbent on me to come and have those conversations as well. To your point, it's not all on you as the leader to
Right.
to go around and talk and get everybody's opinion, because that'd be impossible.
And it's also unfair, right? The relationship between the organization and the individuals that work in it is a relationship, and everybody's got to work in relationships. I mean, I'm divorced, and clearly that didn't work out so well. But I've learned what to do in order to have healthy relationships, and
Right.
it shouldn't be that different. Clearly, there are some different dynamics, but the communication has to be the same. How are we communicating? How are we working on this? It's not about one owning and the other one not. It's got to be equal.
I like that where you're going with that too, and I'm curious, if every leader listening changed one behavior tomorrow morning, what would you recommend that they actually change?
Gosh, every leader. So I think not I think a key piece in leader success is around
Mhm.
trust. Okay.
Yes.
So how how do leaders build that trust? And I think and I'm sort of answering it in a bit of a roundabout,
Yeah.
but where I have seen leaders misstep is in what I call the say do gap.
Mm.
So leaders say that they're going to do something, and then a variety of things come at them. Priorities change, practicality steps in, whatever it might be, and they can't do it. So they
Mhm.
say they're gonna do one thing and they end up doing something different. That's not the problem, right?
Mhm.
Because that can absolutely
That's
be real estate.
reality. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. Where they lose the trust is the lack of communication. Where they lose the
Yes.
trust is not sharing, "Look, I know I told you we weren't gonna have to cut budgets, but you know what? The CFO came in my office and I'd agree that we need to change this, and so here's what we're going to do. Now, how do we all become part of the solution? What can we all think about? How can we act in ways that will allow us to achieve this goal?" So that happens all the time. That's the nature of being in an organization. But when leaders say something, do something else without that communication, without owning it, right, and being authentic about it, you lose the
Absolutely.
trust. And it's very difficult. It takes a long time to get that back.
It really does. Well, and I think it just kind of leans into that whole idea that culture isn't what leaders say, it's what the employee experiences, right?
That's
And
right.
so, and we all know our perception is our reality. So if
Mhm.
how I perceive the situation is what I'm going to believe. One phrase that really caught my attention was radical connectivity. I really
Mhm.
liked that word because I think about that Radical Candor book
Yeah,
that is out there as
that's
well.
right.
But I
Right.
love this because connection doesn't happen by accident. What kind of inspired that framework as you were developing that?
So it's a little personal story. Uh, as a child, I had for a variety of reasons. I had a mother with mental illness and a variety of other things that had gone on that really made me feel disconnected from the world around me and from the people in my life. And I felt like I spent most of my life then trying to find those connections. And
Mm.
it ended up being in places I didn't expect. So whether it was the family that I chose versus the family that was biologically connected, and by the way, my biological, like my cousins are very close. So I'm not saying it's one or the other, but it's both.
Yes, yes.
It's creating places where I felt as though I belonged, and that there were
Oh.
groups of people or ways in which I felt connected to that.
Mhm.
So, this idea of radical connection is about going beyond that moment to really deep ways in which we feel like we are a part of something bigger than ourselves. So, being radically connected to someone or something is to really be believing in it and feeling as though it brings you a sense of grounding and a sense of purpose.
Are you ready to take your podcast to the next level? Let LJM Productions help you sound your best. We specialize in podcast editing, production, audio restoration, and mixing, ensuring every episode is polished, professional, and ready to wow your audience. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned podcaster, we'll handle the technical details so you can focus on sharing your voice. Partner with LJM Productions today and hear the difference.
Okay. So I'm curious then, how do organizations intentionally create connection? Because I do think there was a time when, and I don't know if it was true connection or if it was just the time when we felt like our employer took care of us, so we took care of our employer. There was a sense of loyalty and that all, over the years, obviously that started to change and erode as lots of things happen in the industry and the market and the world today. So how do organizations actually intentionally create that connection?
So I think there are a couple ways that organizations can create sort of this connected culture that they want. One is by listening to their individuals, listening to their employees, understanding really what is going on and not trying to sugarcoat it. So we get these
Mhm,
employee engagement surveys back and we do either nothing with them or we don't
mhm,
share what we do with them. And
mhm.
so if you want to create a place that people feel connected and as though they belong, share the information and ask for help in trying to solve the problems for it.
Oh, I
So
like that.
by by doing because people own what they help create.
Mhm.
So
That's true.
if 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 the organization says that this is not working, whatever this might be,
Mhm.
you wanna ask them for their input, ask them for the involvement that they wanna be in, but also understand that they may feel like it's your job as the organization to solve it. So you wanna create the opportunity for these folks to be involved in the solution to whatever extent they want to. By doing so, you have people then feel like, well, A, I was heard, B, I was valued, and actually what I thought was a problem is being changed? Well, wait a second, hold on. Right? The level of connection then really deepens. Um, so I think that's one way. The others, and this is also a little simplistic, but teach managers how to be managers. Um,
Yes.
we know employees don't leave companies, they leave managers. It's been said
Right.
40,000 times in almost every
Yes.
article about engagement, right? But there's a real truth to that. But
Mhm.
what we do as companies is we take the smartest people who do their job the best and we promote them to managers without giving them the tools and the skills that they need. So,
Yes.
how do we create space for these managers to take a step back to learn what it means to be a manager, how to be inclusive, how to create a culture where people want to show up? How do they teach and mentor their employees well so that they can continue to grow? We don't do that. So if we give them those opportunities, you then create cultures of connection and belonging. And it seems simple, and it sort of is, but those are the two ways that I have found organizations really create this opportunity for connection and belonging.
I really like that because exactly what you said there, and we have heard it said so many different ways. I'm kind of curious, though, your perspective on this as well, because what we're hearing a lot of right now with AI is almost the idea that you could wipe out that layer of middle management, like somehow they're not needed anymore. I
Yeah.
don't believe that. I think you have to have leaders of people. But I'm just kind of curious your thoughts around that because we definitely are seeing a lot of conversation around this.
I could not agree with you more. AI, in my opinion, AI is not, not in my opinion. The AI is not going to wipe out middle managers, right?
Mhm.
But what it's going to do, it's going to make the tasks that middle managers have to do less important because those things can be done by AI. What you're going to see are managers who need to know how to manage and lead people because AI can't do that, right? They
Yeah.
can't sit. Sure, they can write me the script, that I have to have when having a coaching opportunity or terminating someone or whatever it might be. I could get the
Mhm.
script from AI. AI is not gonna Claude's not sitting across from that person and delivering that. They're not gonna
Yeah.
experience that interpersonal relationship that I have with that person and how that conversation goes. So I actually think AI is going to help us as organizations realize that our managers need more support and training than we are giving them right now.
I really appreciate that you said that. And I'm kind of curious because what you leaned into a little bit there is also the vulnerability side of it. What role does vulnerability play in all of this? Because I think you have two schools of thought sometimes with leadership where it's like we can't show any level of vulnerability. It'll be viewed as weakness and therefore we're not good leaders. And then you've got the other side of it, where sometimes maybe someone leans too far into vulnerability and
Yeah.
you're like, maybe I didn't need to know all of that.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
just kind of, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are about how that all plays
Yeah.
into this.
So I think there's a song. So I love music, and so everything always comes back to music for me. There's a song by Rihanna and Kanye called 4 5 Seconds, and there's a line in that song that I remember all the time, which is, "And all of my kindness has been mistaken for weakness." And I think the same thing holds true with vulnerability.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable doesn't mean weak. It means being able to share that I have had an experience where I felt whatever I felt.
Mhm.
And that caused me to do things differently, stronger, faster, better, whatever that might be. So I'm a fan of vulnerability to a point, right?
Right.
Nobody, TMI is TMI, right?
That's
But
right.
by sharing to someone and turning to someone you work with, being like, you know what? I screwed this up. You know what?
Mhm.
I could have done this better. Um, I'm working on it, and I hope you'll hold me accountable to that. Well, what an amazing gift you just gave this person to be able to then say the same thing. And then you know what? The two of you can work on how to make it better. You can
Yeah.
teach this person how to do this stronger, better, faster. You can help them learn the areas for them that are weaker that they can then grow in. I mean, it's a gift from my perspective. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
Brené Brown, but vulnerability is a very positive piece.
I couldn't agree more, and I like the way that you framed that. We've spent several episodes kind of discussing AI and the future of work and who's it
Mhm.
being built for, and as technology becomes more capable, and I'm the human connection. You've made this point for us is that it becomes even more valuable. So as we think about leading through change, you've lived this work. You've helped lead people on the side of this. We talked about the integration of bringing these different companies together,
Mhm.
and I think that's really when belonging is probably tested the most. But
Yeah.
what happens psychologically during major organizational changes? Because I think we forget about the people side of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about psychological safety and fear. And these are components because people wonder what's going to happen for me. How is all of
Mm-hmm.
this going to impact my work, my job? I have, a whole life outside of this company that I am accountable to. And if I don't have money to do it, I don't know what I'm going to do. So being able to recognize and alleviate some of the fear for folks. Um, becomes really critical. And you do that through communication and trust building. I've had many managers come to me and they say things like, well, I'm trying, but they don't trust what I'm doing. They don't trust what I'm saying in some
Mm-hmm.
way, shape, or form. The thing is, that's not a moment in time. It's not as though you
Right.
do one thing and your people, your colleagues trust you.
Right.
This is the marathon, not the sprint, right? It's not as though you do one thing and people go, "Oh my God, trustworthy all the time," right? You have to continue to work on it. It's a relationship. There's constant effort that needs to be put in. And that's really true with trust because it's very difficult to build and really easy to break. And I know that sounds really trite, but it's the truth.
It is so true. I'm curious, what do you think is the first thing that leaders should do when introducing major change? Because I do think that is a critical point when you
Mhm.
can, exactly to your point, you can make or break trust right then and there as to how you approach those major changes.
Explain, why is this change happening, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Show that you know that it's going to impact people. Here's what you know about how it's going to impact people, but also
Mm-hmm.
recognize there are things that you don't know about how it's going to impact people, and you want to hear from others, right? So,
Yeah.
open lines of communication. I think about change initiatives at previous organizations that have failed, um, and they usually boil down to one of two things. It's the ta-da moment. People feel like there needs to be the ta-da moment, which is the here we go. Here's all the things that are happening, and here's the change, and we're super excited for it, and really, we're ready to go. And nobody likes big surprises. I mean, unless
No.
it's jewelry or diamonds or some
Right.
chocolate, right? Nobody really likes surprises, right?
No, it's true.
So it's about building the communication. So that ta-da moment doesn't work. Or
Mm.
it's the assuming that everybody has all of the information. So while it's a lot of work, you have to capture that messaging in a bunch of different ways. Whether it's town halls and on a regular basis, it's through written communication, it's through one of the more successful changes I've ever seen was where you had people from throughout the department be involved in the change, be involved in the change in a bunch of different ways. They then became the ambassadors and the folks who went out and had those conversations and shared the information. So you're hitting it from a bunch of different levels so
Yeah.
everybody has the opportunity to know what's going on because the lack of that communication can destroy it immediately.
That is so true. I love that you said that as well because I remember a colleague of mine, Cindy Emanuel, she's Find Your Change Champions, right? The people who are
Absolutely.
going to go out there. And those don't always have to be your rah-rah people. Sometimes
Mhm.
you actually want to find the ones who are most negative about the things
Absolutely.
because they oftentimes have the relationships and the
Yes,
connections. People listen to them for whatever
that's
reason.
right.
So if you can convert those people into your change champion and have them going out there and talking, it can make such a huge difference. So I love that you use that example.
Absolutely. And you don't even need to convert them. You can't. I mean, it's great if you do, but the people who you know are going to be the naysayers, right? The curmudgeons,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Bring them into the conversation. So even if they don't agree with it, they have the information. So when someone comes to them and says, "Psh, this is never going to work," they may be able to say, well, I was in this meeting and I think it's going to be hard. I'm not sure it's going to work, but I heard, and they're able to share that information. Those naysayers
Yes.
can become the folks, to your point, that really do help bring and transform the organization to being a part of it versus being the ones pushing back.
I have exciting news. The Her Resources podcast is opening sponsorships. If your brand supports women in HR and leadership, think talent, well being, learning, pay equity, coaching, productivity, or mission driven tech. This is your moment. Our listeners are decision makers and change makers who show up for real conversations and practical tools every week. We offer flexible options, pre-roll or mid-roll host reads, series sponsorships, and thought leadership integrations that highlight your story without the fluff. Ready to connect with a highly engaged audience and grow with us? Email contact@herresourcespodcast.com and put sponsorship in the subject line. I can't wait to collaborate. Roz, I'd love to end with one final question because I think it kind of captures the heart of everything that we've been discussing today. Throughout our conversation, you've made the case that engagement isn't something leaders can demand, it's
Yep.
something that they earn. So let me ask you this. If engagement is earned and not mandated, what are leaders doing today, often unintentionally, that makes employees feel like they have to earn their place instead of simply knowing that they belong?
It's a lack of consistency. If and it's one of the behaviors that I talk about, this fair treatment. If your team members see that you're doing something different for one person than for another, there's no way you're going to be able to recover from that,
Hmm.
right? Um, so by maybe unintentionally not treating people fairly or more importantly, equitably, you're going to destroy what you're trying to build. So I think that
Yeah.
that really is a key factor.
No, I think that's a really great point. And I'm just curious, if we think about just it's really this is kind of a perfect place to end because if every employee walks into work carrying these three questions, whether they ever say them out loud or not, but do I understand why my work matters?
Mhm.
How does my work make me feel? And do I know I belong here? I think, what's striking is that employees aren't the only ones maybe who should be asking those questions. Maybe leaders should be asking that themselves as well. And maybe they should ask questions like, have I made our purpose clear? Do people leave conversations with me feeling encouraged or are they feeling diminished? And have I created an environment where people don't have to prove they deserve a seat at the table? Because to your point, belonging isn't built during annual engagement surveys. It's built in the thousands of everyday interactions that quietly tell people whether they matter. Russ, what would be like three things you'd want to leave our listeners with today?
Work is a relationship and it requires attending to. So it's not something you can just do something once. You've got to continue to communicate, continue to build trust, continue to work on that relationship. So that would be one. Second is, as part of being a relationship, it requires both parties or all parties to be equally, or not equally, but to be invested in the outcomes. The third is, let's start thinking about how AI not can be a problem, but actually can help people be better managers and really uh, help create the cultures of belonging and inclusion.
I think those are three really good ways to sum everything up. I am curious if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Absolutely. So my website's the easiest. It's very simple. It's Dr. Roz Cohen, Dr. Roz, Roz, Cohen, Cohen.com, or you can just search me up on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. And we'll put that in the show notes so that you can all access. We'll also put links to Dr. Roz's book as well. I want to just put a huge thank you to Dr. Roz Cohen for joining us today and sharing the research and insights behind the engagement dilemma, how to create a culture of belonging. I would recommend that you pick this up because it's such a good book. Um, if today's conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to pick up a copy of the book and continue exploring how leaders can intentionally create workplaces where people feel connected, valued, and inspired to contribute. And as I reflect on today's conversation, I keep coming back to one thought. The future of work won't be shaped solely by artificial intelligence, new technology, or the need or the next organizational redesign. It will be shaped by leaders who understand that people don't give their best because they're told to. They give their best because they feel seen, they feel valued, and they know they belong. And I do think belonging is so important. And I'm so glad that Roz talked about that today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, follow, rate, and review the Her Resources podcast wherever you listen. Those simple actions help us grow the community and continue bringing the conversations that challenge conventional thinking about leadership, work, and life. And if today's discussion sparked a new idea or a challenge or challenged maybe one of your own assumptions, leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from all of you what your biggest takeaway was. And if someone came to mind that we're listening, maybe a colleague, a leader, a mentor, or a friend, share this episode with them. Great conversations become even more powerful when they're shared. And finally, if you know someone with a story or perspective that would inspire our audience, we always love to hear from you. Reach out anytime at contact@herresourcespodcast.com or visit us at our website at herresourcespodcast.com. Until next time, I want to leave you with one final question. If I worked for me, would I feel like I belonged? Be radically honest with yourself, because the answer to that question may tell you more about your leadership than any engagement survey ever could. I'm Linda Misegadis. This is the Her Resources Podcast. Roz, thank you so much again for being with us. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you next time.